Welcome back to another episode of Urban Crime Stories. In this episode, we will dive into the disturbing case of Cheyanne Jessie. In August of 2015, Polk County Sheriff's deputies went to a house on Drainfield Road in Lakeland, Florida, after receiving a missing persons report. There they met Cheyanne, a woman who told them that the house belonged to Mark, her father, who had recently gone missing with Meredith, a 6-year-old girl, Cheyanne's daughter. Cheyanne claimed that Mark had taken Meredith to Georgia to visit his family and that she had heard nothing further. But as the agents questioned Cheyanne, they realized that there was something about her story that didn't add up, and that a dark secret lurked in that house. Let's take a deeper dive. Mark Weekly, 50, and his granddaughter, little Meredith Jessie, just 6 years old, mysteriously disappeared on July 18, 2015, after last being seen by a friend of Mark's family. Mark's daughter and Meredith's mother, Cheyanne Jessie, called authorities to report the disappearance of her father, who had reportedly traveled to Georgia to visit some old relatives. However, when police officers entered the home, they found several pieces of evidence suggesting that Mark and Meredith's fate was far more sinister. There are not many details about Cheyanne Jessie's childhood, but we do know a few things. Cheyanne was born on August 25, 1989 in Rossville, Georgia, and spent the first few years of her life with her mother until her mother lost custody of her when she was 4 years old. She then began living with her father, Mark Ivan Weekly. Despite having a mild learning disability that landed her in several special education classes, and even being diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 8, Cheyanne was able to lead a fairly normal life. During high school, she worked part-time at a local McDonald's, and after graduation, Cheyanne and her father left Georgia and moved south, eventually settling in Lakeland, Florida. Things began to get difficult for her between August and September of 2008, when she became pregnant at the age of 20 and gave birth to her daughter, Meredith, on May 26, 2009. However, becoming a mother marked the beginning of a not-so-happy time in her life as Meredith's biological father, a man identified as Billy Salisbury, refused to take care of her. Cheyanne, now a single mother, was forced to struggle to raise her daughter, sometimes needing the financial support of her family to survive. The difficulties did not end there, as the restless Meredith was soon diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, a behavioral disorder characterized by disobedience and defiance toward adults and authority figures. Cheyanne and Meredith moved in with her partner, Matthew Monroe, known as Cody, in a fifth-wheel RV that was located on the property of Cody's parents. Soon, their relationship began to deteriorate due to Meredith's behavioral problems. Still, nothing seemed to indicate that such a tragedy would befall this unfortunate family. On August 1, 2015, Cheyanne called the sheriff's department to report that her father and daughter were missing. During the call, she explained that her father had left for Georgia 2 weeks earlier, and that he had called her prior to his disappearance to ask her to get rid of all of his belongings. From that point on, investigators began to notice inconsistencies in Cheyanne's story. With no evidence that Mark had notified the landlord that he was moving out, the agents searched the property and took Cheyanne to the station, though not yet suspecting her. What they found was a horrifying sight. The sofa, covered with a sheet, was covered in deep cuts and bloodstains. There were dead flies everywhere, and an unbearable smell of rotting flesh and death hung in the air. And that was just the beginning. After the crime scene was discovered, Cheyanne was interviewed and gave a rather bizarre version of events. Cheyanne said that on Friday, July 17, 2015, she drove Cody, her partner, to his job at the local Walmart, and dropped off Meredith at Mark's house at approximately 6:30 a.m. the next day. She said that she and her father had a nasty argument that day, after Mark began to berate her for not properly fulfilling her responsibilities as a mother. She also said that the next day, Saturday, July 18th, the same day Mark Weekly was last seen, she and Cody had been asleep, so she did not call him again. On Monday, Cheyanne claimed to have visited her father, whom she did not find at home, and hours later, Cody began receiving numerous text messages from the missing Mark's number, telling him that he was going on a trip to Georgia to visit relatives, that he had terminal cancer, that he had less than a year to live, that he was taking Meredith with him, and that Cheyanne could get rid of all his belongings. Cheyanne told police that a few days later she went to her father's house to see what had happened. She reported that she entered the house with a copy of the key and found piles of dead rats in the kitchen, which she disposed of before starting to clean up in a failed attempt to cover up the stench. In addition to the rats, she said she found huge chunks of rotting meat in the sink, filled with maggots and a dead raccoon under the house. Cheyanne claimed to have thrown the rats and meat in the garbage, used a pole saw to pull the raccoon carcass out from under the house, and used a pair of tongs to pick it up and throw it into the woods. No trace of this evidence would ever be found. But the inconsistencies in her story didn't end there. All of Mark's vehicles, his wallet, his ID, his money, and the medications Meredith had been prescribed were still in the house, with no sign of Cheyanne showing any concern, even though it had been over a week and a half since her daughter and father had disappeared. Cheyanne tried to fill in the gaps in her story by saying that Vicky Parker, her father's girlfriend, had called her and said that Mark had rented a car. However, when Vicky was contacted, she not only denied that Mark had done any such thing, but also said that she had stopped by the property on July 22nd and met Cheyanne, who, in addition to not saying a word to her about her father's alleged trip, was loading some heavy stuff into a Chevy Suburban. But the creepiest revelations came when the investigators interviewed Cody, who revealed that Cheyanne had asked him a number of strange questions, such as whether he believed a human body could fit into a 55-gallon bag, or how long it took maggots to decompose a human body. The only part of Cheyanne's story that corroborated her statements was that Cody was indeed unhappy with Meredith's behavior, and that he had given her an ultimatum. Either Cheyanne would learn to control her child, or he would leave her. When Cheyanne finally realized that her missing person story wasn't working and that the evidence against her was mounting, she confessed to killing her father, claiming it was self-defense. According to her version of events, she and Mark had a heated argument, and her father had lost his temper and tried to stab her with a knife. She had managed to wrestle the knife away from him, and during the struggle, Meredith, who had run up to them telling them to stop fighting, was cut in the throat by the knife and bled to death. She also admitted she managed to get her father's gun that he kept under the sofa and shot him several times in self-defense. Days later, when she had no choice, she returned to the house, cleaned up what she could, put the bodies in plastic bags and used the pickup truck to transport them to a shed on the property, where they were found by investigators. Cheyanne continued to try to cover up her crime by claiming that the bloodstains and deep cuts on the couch were self-inflicted during a moment of frustration. However, forensic examinations revealed that Cheyanne's self-defense argument was nonsense. Mark Weekly had 12 stab wounds to his body and 3 gunshot wounds to his head, while the 6-year-old girl, Meredith, had more than 4 stab wounds, including one to the back of her head and a gunshot wound to her head. Therefore, her claim that Meredith had died from an accidental wound no longer made sense. Cheyanne Jessie had murdered her father and her only daughter in cold blood. The investigation and trial of Cheyanne Jessie revealed that the reasons for her horrible crime were nothing more than the anger and resentment she felt toward the girl, whom she considered responsible for the difficulties she was having with her partner, Cody, and toward her father, Mark, who refused to take custody of Meredith. It was for this reason, surely thinking that her sentimental relationship and life would be better without her daughter, that she murdered her in cold blood, in addition to taking the life of her father in a violent and merciless manner. During the trial, Cheyanne tried to save herself by claiming that the person responsible for the crimes was Cody, who had sexually abused the girl and decided to eliminate her in order not to take any risks. However, this theory was disproved by the coroner's report and by evidence from the investigation. Finally, after years of waiting, Cheyanne Jessie was found guilty in July of 2019. The jury recommended the death penalty for her crimes, but instead she was sentenced to life imprisonment in February of 2021. Please tell me your thoughts about this case in the comments below, and remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications in order to be notified for upcoming episodes. Until next time, I'll see you with another episode of Urban Crime Stories.